Reality is often disappointing. That is, it was. Now, reality can be whatever I want.
All right, welcome back to the IMNerd Podcast, guys. I'm your host, Freeway, and I'm here with my fabulous, amazing co-host, Kenny.
Oh, holy shit. All the adjectives.
I just felt like changing up today. But yeah, we are back, and we're back in a full swing of things. So this is our second episode this week already. And next episode, we do have a Yu-Gi-Oh! Guest coming on for the Thursday episode. If you are in our Discord, use the channel that is called Guest Questions if you want to ask specific questions to the person coming on the podcast. That is something for our Patreon members only. But if you're in our Discord, yeah, you can submit questions in that channel. And as long as the question is not something wild, right? Like, I'm not even going to say it. As long as the question is not something wild, we will ask it to the guest. As long as it's pretty respectful and reasonable, it will be asked on the podcast episode. But anyways, this episode here is brought up by Kenny, and I thought it was a pretty good idea. We didn't really have a topic for today. So this episode is going to mainly focus around things that we highly anticipated that ended up being disappointments. And it's actually kind of funny because I'm sure everyone listening can think about many things that you were excited about before it came out. And this could be video games, this could be anime, this could be movies, this could be TV shows. There's gonna be so many different things, but something that you anticipated, and then when it finally did release, it just did not hold up to your expectations, and it made it kind of suck. First on my list is Game of Thrones, but I actually don't want to start there. I want to actually start with something from my childhood, something that a lot of people probably remember as being a huge letdown, and it's Spider-Man 3. So if you remember the original Spider-Man trilogy with Tobey Maguire, for the most part, that trilogy is amazing. Like, I love Spider-Man 1, I love Spider-Man 2. Spider-Man 2 was highly regarded as the best movie outside of now No Way Home just completely stomps. But before No Way Home existed, and before honestly the newest trilogy existed in general, Spider-Man 2 was the best Spider-Man movie. And Spider-Man 3 somehow, it was just a huge letdown coming off of Doc Ock and that amazing scene in Spider-Man 2 where like he's holding the train and his mask is completely destroyed and basically everyone can see his face, and they find like essentially people can know that he's Peter Parker, which is a huge deal. There's a lot going on in that movie, a lot of strife because he also looked up to Doc Ock, him being a scientist as well, and also super smart. And then to see him be turned essentially evil by the device that he created to harness his son and all that stuff and go literally crazy where he wants to destroy shit and all types of stuff. It was a really good movie, really good villain. And that villain came back in No Way Home, and he was amazing. That they actually kept the same exact actor for it is another reason why I think No Way Home is... So No Way Home, to me, the more I think about it, it might just be the best Marvel movie ever. Actually, I guess it's not considered a Marvel movie, right? Those are...
I mean, I think it is. I would say it is just because, like, yeah, it's a Sony property, like Spider-Man is.
Yeah.
But
it's a
at
Marvel
the end of the
hero,
day,
right? Yeah.
It's a Marvel hero, but they also merged it with it. It's part, even though it's Sony, it's merged with the Marvel.
Okay.
Like, Spider-Man's in Endgame. So
yes.
like,
and he's in a lot of them. He's in Civil War. He's in a lot. So okay, I will say it is in contention for me. It is top 2 Marvel movies ever. The only one that competes with it for me as though which one would be number 1 is Infinity War. Infinity War took like 10 plus years to create, and I always say No Way Home took 20 years to create, which is insane.
Also, just real quick on the note, I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure the new Spider-Man movies with Tobey Maguire are written, or at least co-written, by the Marvel team. Because
not with Tobey Maguire, with the Tom Holland.
Not Tobey Maguire, Tom Holland.
Yes.
Because you notice whenever Sony makes a movie, it's like not good. Like they made that fucking... What was that shitty movie they just made?
Mobius?
Yeah, Morbius or whatever.
Morbius. I keep saying Mobius, the fucking Frost Monarch, but yes.
Like when Sony has full creative control of their movie, it's like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, Morbius was terrible. That's a disappointing movie. But I didn't really expect much from it, if I'm being honest. So that one I can't even say it was highly anticipated. But in the case of like No Way Home and Infinity War, one of them is number one. I don't really care which because I love them both. But one of them took 20 years to make, and I feel like if you grew up watching Spider-Man, the original Tobey Maguire series, right, and then you see No Way Home, so you've seen every Spider-Man movie up to that point. It makes No Way Home absolutely absurd. Like, I almost feel bad for the kids who never saw Tobey Maguire, maybe even never saw Andrew Garfield's Spider-Man movies, because you don't fully get.
It doesn't hit the same.
It definitely doesn't hit the same. There's a couple redemption arcs in No Way Home. There's a lot going on, and even the moments where they both first show up and the whole theater. My theater went crazy night one when Andrew Garfield came through the portal. Like, that shit made everyone lose their minds. So it's really interesting to think about, like, how there's a generation of kids who love Spider-Man, but they never saw the original movies, or even if they saw them, I still don't think it's the same because they didn't properly like grow up with that being like Tobey wasn't their Spider-Man, Andrew wasn't their Spider-Man. They kind of just know Tom Holland first, and then they kind of went back if they have a parent who's like, oh, you should see the originals. But the third Spider-Man movie, Spider-Man 3, the reason why it was highly anticipated, but a really big letdown is, one, it was following Spider-Man 2. I already said why that movie was great. Spider-Man 3 decided to have 3 villains in it. It had Venom, it had Sandman, and it also had a Green Goblin, Hobgoblin-esque character as well. Like, I think Harry Osborn, that's when he also gets like, he's mad about his dad and stuff, so he starts to become the Hobgoblin or the Green. I forget exactly which Goblin he was, but he also becomes a villain in that movie. So you're dealing with 3 of Spider-Man's. Well, 2 of them are really big. Like Green Goblin and Venom are 2 of his biggest villains, but then you also have Sandman there, just cause, and it's a convoluted mess. It is just a mess. Like, I know the movie's really old, so if you don't remember it, that's fine. But the thing I do remember is Black Suit Spidey had very Black Air Force energy. Like, he was just an asshole. He came out. There's that one meme that people use all the time where he's doing that dance. He comes out in the black suit. Yes, Kenny's doing it right now. So if you're looking at this, if you're watching this on Patreon, that dance is so fucking cringe. But he comes out, he does that dance. He's like an asshole. He has all his confidence, and it's all from the Venom suit. It's all from the symbiote, and it's making him, more aggressive, more of a dick, and he doesn't have any reservations about the things he says or does. But that's not even the part that makes it bad, is that Spidey gets the Venom suit, because I would like a movie focused on Venom. It's just that, like, why did you combine Venom, one of his biggest possible villains, with so many of his other villains in the same exact movie? You only have 2 hours. Like, the movie's not, it doesn't have enough time to develop 3 different storylines. It's
insane how good No Way Home is.
Yes.
Because, like, No Way Home has
every single villain he's ever had,
like,
basically.
It has all of the villains in it, but the writing chops, like, it pulls together so much better, because one of the biggest complaints levied against Spider-Man 3 is that they just tried to do too much.
They try to do way too much.
They spread way too thin, and Venom is, I think, arguably, at least for the wider generic fan base, like regular people that just like know Spider-Man, Venom is like his most iconic villain. You know what I mean? Like, Venom is Spider-Man's Joker, regardless of whether or not you're a real comic book fan and you know more stuff. Like, to the wider audience, Venom is by far the most iconic Spider-Man villain.
I agree with that.
He's like the one everybody's waiting for.
I consider Venom to be Spider-Man's main villain, only because I grew up watching the cartoon, the Spider-Man cartoon, and Venom was always like a very recurring enemy. And you even saw episodes of how he became Venom. I think it's his name Brock or something like that.
Yeah, Eddie Brock.
Yes, you even see the episode where like the suit it falls off of Peter. I think it ends up on him, and like it sound fucks it up real bad. Can't deal with sound, so he goes to a bell tower, and that kind of fucks up the suit. But yeah, Venom has always been, like you said, his Joker. And a movie with Venom is obviously going to get people highly anticipated, right? Because you've seen the cartoons at that point, and you're like, oh my god, Venom's going to be in a movie. It's going to look insane. It's all these cool things, and then it doesn't pan out like that at all.
No, not even a little bit. And they just try to do so much, like the Sandman stuff in the beginning. It's like, okay, and then he's like roped into the whole movie, and then there's like you said, Hobgoblin, and like sort of this revenge arc with Hobgoblin,
like, oh, you killed my dad.
And it's like,
Yeah, it's a lot.
Yeah, and then they do all of that while still fitting in the Venom story, and it's like none of the stories got fully fleshed out the way they could have deserved.
Yeah, Sandman just kind of went away. Like, nothing really happens with some of them. It's a really bad conclusion to a otherwise would have been a really good trilogy, because I really do like Spider-Man 1 just for setting up the whole thing, so, and it being the first Spider-Man movie that was, you know, in real life, at least that I know of. And I just think that even though I haven't seen it in a very long time, I don't know how it aged nowadays, but I remember as a kid, it was a really good movie to watch as a kid.
I've seen it somewhat recently. By recently, I mean within the last like 3 years.
That's really recent, yes. Considering it's like 20 years old.
It's not, you know, it's not a fucking superstar movie, but it's still a good movie. Like,
okay, good. Yeah, like it does what it needs to do for Spider-Man.
Yeah, like it's a fun, enjoyable movie. It's not Martin Scorsese, but it's
it's not Quentin Tarantino. This kind of leads me into this kind of like pivots right into the next highly anticipated, but just turned out to be a disappointment is Venom. The Venom movies are trash. And to me, I didn't even see the movies and I was disappointed because I was excited to see them. I was kind of getting pumped up for them because it's Venom. Yeah.
And I should have known. And then every person that I trust with every single person ever,
everyone who saw
was just telling me how horrible it is. And I was just like, it kind of knocked me down to like, whatever, I guess I'll just get around to saying it and I'll make my own opinion. But like, I got so deflated from it, I just still never even got around to saying it because I just have never even heard a single redeeming quality.
There's nothing good about them, if I'm being honest. Like, even the jokes, because they're very, they're meant to be comedic. So a lot of what you're watching is a bunch of jokes going back and forth, which I honestly find annoying about Marvel projects in general, that all of them just have this constant need to every single scene has to be comedy. It's one of the things I hate about Endgame. Like the first 2 hours of Endgame, to me, I still can't stand how everything is supposed to be a joke. Like there's a joke in every single scene, something to make you laugh in every scene. I just don't think that's necessary. And, you know, especially considering that like 5 years, all these people have been pronounced dead, right? Like they're gone, they're blipped out of existence. It's like every scene does not need to be like this, oh, let's make a joke moment. But that's Venom is like that to the extreme because it's also not good. And I also hate in those movies. So Kenny hasn't seen them, but this, I mean, spoiler, I guess.
Don't care.
He doesn't. I know. I already said that's what I was about to say. You don't even care about it anyway. Venom speaks over top of Eddie Brock. Like he has his own voice. And the symbiote speaks a lot, and it has this it has a cringe voice. It sounds like a person trying to deepen their voice, like Christian Bale playing Batman.
Yeah,
and he's always
like somebody trying to be like edgy or something.
That's exactly what it comes off as. Yeah. And a lot of things he says, like, "I want to eat the cat. Let me eat the cat. I want to eat the cat. Why can I not eat the cat? I want the brains. I'm going to go get brains now." Like he actually sounds like that. Like I'm pretty much doing a 1-1-1 ratio. Like I sound exactly like.
Why does he sound like a brain dead Yoda?
I mean, basically that. Like he literally. I'm not even joking. If you've watched the Venom movies, you know that what I just did, my impersonation was spot on, and I'm only half joking. It's really bad. So the Venom movies, I was really anticipating them being good because one, I just really think Venom is a really cool villain that you can develop and make good movies out of. Like, I think that the script that they gave those movies is bad, but I don't think that Venom, the character, is unworthy of a good script and good possibilities to just be decent. But for some reason, it just did not play out well at all. And it just ended up being a convoluted mess. The second one, more so, the one with Carnage, is even worse. Like, I just kind of sat there the whole movie. Like,
I forgot they even made a second one.
They made a second one. It has Woody Allen playing Carnage, and it's honestly even worse. Like, things are just happening, and that's kind of the movie. Things are literally just happening. You're watching the screen. I went to go see it in theaters, and the only reason I went to go see a movie like this in theaters, I didn't pay for it technically. I have that AMC A-list pass.
You got the pass.
So I paid $20. Now it's $24 a month, I believe. It's gone up. It used to be like $20, and then it's gone up to like $24 now. But I paid $24 a month. Every month to just be able to see as many movies as I want. And it's worth it because one movie is $20 nowadays. I still don't understand how everyone's not on this train yet, because literally one time I went to go see a movie with, I think, Silverman, and he paid for the tickets. But like when I asked him, how much do I owe you? He was like $20. And he like sent me a screenshot and everything of like what he had to pay for each ticket. And it literally was like $20. And it made me immediately annoyed because at the time I already had the AMC A-list thing. So like the fact that I'm paying for a movie is already stupid. But to pay $20 when I pay $20 a month to see as many as I want doesn't make sense.
You're like, I already paid that this month.
Yeah, like if he's like, oh, the movie was like $10, I'd be like, okay, that still sucks. But to pay the exact amount that I pay to see unlimited movies just seems weird to me. So
I'm guessing you guys like didn't go to an AMC.
The thing is, we actually did end up going to AMC in Jersey. But I guess that either he doesn't have AMC A-list, or he didn't think to like ask, or maybe it's because we wanted to all sit together or whatever. But next time,
so he like bought the tickets ahead of time.
He did,
so you couldn't use your thing.
He bought 8 tickets ahead of time. It was one of the Marvel movies. It was one of the anticipated Marvel movies. He bought 8 tickets, and he was like, "I don't know who's going, but I bought 8 tickets. I bought a whole row, so that way,
That's
like we can." And basically, he was basically saying like, if 8 people don't go, I'll just pay. Like it'll just fall on me.
Yeah.
Silverman's that kind of person. Like he'll say who wants to go see the movie. And he's like, all right, I got a reasonable head count of like 6 people want to go. I'm gonna buy 8 tickets, just in case. And he'll just foot the bill
if
for the 2.
Come, I got to row to myself.
Yeah, like he'll just foot the bill for the other 2 tickets. That's just the kind of person he is, which is amazing. Silverman's a great friend, but it does suck having to pay $20 for something we already have the A-list. So I ended up seeing Venom both 1 and 2 because I have AMC A-list. And honestly, the kind of cool thing is that I do see a lot of movies that I normally would not pay for because of having that perk. But
yeah, you would never go see, especially. Maybe you'd be convinced to go see Venom 1, but after Venom 1, you would never go see Venom 2.
So you are
because
correct.
of the situation, you're like, fuck it, I get to see it for free anyway.
You are 100% correct. I wanted to see Venom 1 at my own accord, and I probably would have paid for it, honestly. Like, if it wasn't coming to streaming services, I probably would just pay for Venom 1 anyway. But Venom 2, I knew going into it that it was going to be bad. Also, not to put too much stocks in our like ratings or critics and stuff like that, like Rotten Tomatoes, but I do always check Rotten Tomatoes before I see a movie, just because I like to know if something is completely fucking tanking. And that may deter me if the movie is particularly bad. I didn't end up seeing Black Adam. I still want to see it, but I don't think I want to go out of my house, pay for Ubers to go to the movie theater and like spend time outside the house when I can just see it on streaming when it eventually comes there. So Black Adam, I just straight up didn't see it. It's technically free for me. But like it's doing so bad. That,
but once again, I will not go to the theaters to see it.
That's how
I'll see it when I see it. I mainly just want to see it because I like The Rock.
Me too. I like The Rock, and the trailers don't look that bad. But I still don't want to, because when I go to the movies, it's always on a Saturday or a Sunday. And so me giving up like a weekend, like making time on a weekend to do that when I could just do so many other things is not the fantasy for me. So, but yeah, the Venom movies were highly anticipated for me personally, and they ended up being a huge letdown. And that just sucks. What about you, Kenny? What do you have as far as something that?
So my number one, the very first one that came to my mind, and it's part of the reason why I was at work when this idea came to me. Because I was at work and I was like, we haven't figured out what we're going to record on Sunday yet. And I was like, just trying to think of topics. And then like this popped in my head. This popped in my head because I'm playing Pokemon Scarlet and Violet right now. The most disappointing, honestly, the most disappointing generation of Pokemon as a whole is the generation that comes before Scarlet and Violet. So I think that's 6, 7, 8. I think that's Generation 8, which is the Sword and Shield generation.
Okay.
Sword and Shield, those are, in terms of just like Pokemon games that aren't remakes, those are, in my opinion, the absolute worst Pokemon games. And it's very disappointing them being the first mainline Pokemon games on a home console. Like, the first official new generation Pokemon games. Like, for years, people have been saying, like, I can't wait for Pokemon to like be on the GameCube or the N64 or the Wii, or because like they wanted a real Pokemon game like the Game Boy games or the DS games, but were like Pokemon Stadium, but they were real games. And you go do the gyms and everything. And people were anticipating that for years, since fucking Red and Blue, since Pokemon Stadium was a thing. And Sword and Shield was just like, in so many fronts, an absolute huge disappointment in a lot of ways. The gameplay, just the story, the way everything plays out. Like Scarlet and Violet has its performance issues, and its performance issues are definitely worse than Sword and Shield, unfortunately. But the game as a whole is like a million times better.
Yeah. The
story's way better, and Pokemon isn't known for having good stories. And that's why I think Scarlet and Violet's story is so good, because a lot of Pokemon games after Red and Blue and Gold and Silver, like starting with Ruby and Sapphire, they try to do this like end of the world type game. Like Red and Blue, there's not a story. You like go through, you happen to fight a crime boss, and like you just want to be the Pokemon master. There's not like you saving the world. But starting in the later games, you like save the world from like these calamities. And Scarlet and Violet is just like a really personal story with like personal motivations and stuff with different characters, which makes it just better and like kind of touch you more. And anyway, Sword and Shield story is horrible. There's no exploration. Everything's just in a straight line hallway like FF13, which
I hate that so much. Actually, let me add that to my list because we're gonna have to talk about that.
Yeah, that's why I knew FF13 was gonna.
I'm glad because obviously this topic we literally came up with it. Well, you told me about it today, so I had only a few hours. I came up with it like last night. Yeah, and I only had a few hours to brainstorm the things that I wanted to talk about in it. But Final Fantasy 13 is a huge letdown, so I'm putting it on my list, and it will definitely be talked about in this episode. But go ahead.
So, so Sword and Shield is just like a hallway. Like in a lot of Pokemon games, there's a part where like the adventure happens. There's like something that happens.
You can
and
deviate.
It's like, you deviate and you got to like go do that thing or whatever. So in Sword and Shield, I'll never forget. It's one of the parts that annoyed me the most. You're going through the game and like you're fighting all the gyms, and the champion is like always there. Champion Leon, who is cool. Champion Leon is there, and there's a part where like a huge explosion happens, and there's like bad guys doing shit over there. And in every other game, you the player would go over there, go through like a dungeon, fight Pokemon, fight grunts, get to the boss of like that dungeon or whatever, and like you'd explore. In this game, the champion's there, and he just goes, "You go to the next gym. I'll go deal with all of that. I'll go deal with all of the story.
Right.
You just go to the next gym." And like, it's just so weird because every time like an opportunity presents itself for you to go off the path and explore something else, there's a character that says like, "No, don't worry. You just keep going straight. I'll go over here and do that shit." It's like, no, I want to go do that shit. What do you stop it?
Yeah, and that doesn't sound. Yeah,
it's really frustrating. And then once to Generation 8, which I believe Sword and Shield Generation 8, the remakes of Diamond and Pearl come out in that generation. A Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl. Generation 4 is by far my favorite generation as a whole. Diamond, Pearl, Platinum, Heart Gold, Soul Silver, and every remake in Pokemon was always a step above the quality of the game that came out in the generation. So Ruby and Sapphire came out, and then like Fire Red and Leaf Green were kind of on par, not necessarily a step ahead. But then Diamond and Pearl, and then Heart Gold, Soul Silver, which were remakes of Gold and Silver, were like a step above Diamond and Pearl. Omega Ruby, Alpha Sapphire were a step above Pokemon X and Y. And so whenever they did a remake, it was always a step above the game that came out like right before it, the mainline game. And so Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl, I was like, all right, I'm Generation 4 remake coming. This is super hype and exciting. It's going to be like a step above Sword and Shield. Like Sword and Shield had good things about it, but it was just bad because of the hallway and all these other things. Diamond and Pearl is an open game. So you give that these Nintendo Switch graphics and let me run around and make it open, like it's going to be awesome. No, instead they just made it look like a fucking cell phone game, and it was horrible. And they made it worse than Platinum in a lot of ways. So anyway, Pokemon Generation 8, Sword and Shield, Brilliant Diamond, Shining Pearl is one of my biggest disappointments playing Pokemon since Red and Blue and anticipating the first mainline console Pokemon games. And just that whole generation was a huge, gigantic letdown.
Yeah, and you've expressed this opinion on the podcast before, so I'm not surprised at all that it made your list of things that you were ready and excited for. Like everyone else, when the whole world gets excited when a new Pokemon generation is announced, and all you know is the starters. The whole world, including me, who hasn't played Pokemon in a decade.
Oh, also the worst starters ever. I truly think Sword and Shield has the worst starter designs of all of them. Like, the absolute worst starter designs. Like, they are fucking... The best one is Rillaboom, the grass starter. Yeah. But even he is terrible because he lugs around a giant drum set, and I just think that's idiotic. But, like, I get Cubone, like, carries around a little bone. Like, it's just like a club. Like, fine. Carrying around a drum set everywhere you go is absurd. But anyway, my bad for cutting you off.
So I remember you telling me about Pokemon and how bad the last generation was, and I was genuinely surprised because I saw a lot of people were playing it, but that's just Pokemon in general. People are going to play every game no matter what. But then I did see people expressing some of the same sentiments as you after a while. Like, yeah, this game has a lot of issues, despite me having fun with it because it's still Pokemon, it's still something I grew up with. But we can acknowledge some Pokemon games have to be better than others. If there's 9 generations of Pokemon, certainly there's a bottom half and a top half. You're just saying that Sword and Shield for you is at the bottom of the bottom. Like it definitely is. So in the vein of, since I brought up Spider-Man 3, in the vein of trilogies that also ended pretty terribly, but no one knew going into it that it would be that bad. I don't know if people remember, but X-Men Last Stand, which was the third movie in that trilogy,
It's so hard to keep track of all the X-Men movies.
That's the
for
one with
me.
like Halle Berry playing Storm. The guy
Is that the Toad one?
Well, so that is that trilogy. That one you're talking about is the Do You Know What Happens to a Toad When It Gets Struck by Lightning? That's the first X-Men movie, period.
Okay.
This one is the one where Jean Grey becomes Phoenix and she disintegrates. She disintegrates Professor Xavier. She also disintegrates Cyclops, her lover.
Yep.
And the movie was just like Spider-Man, actually. There was too much going on. There was the Phoenix plot. There's other plots going on. And they honestly just didn't know what they were doing with the script. So they just had main characters dying, which didn't feel necessary. Like, why is she killing Professor X and Scott Summers? Like, why did they both need to get disintegrated? I get that the Phoenix is a powerful entity and a powerful force and all this other stuff, but it just kind of didn't really help anyone's character development or to wrap up the story at all.
I remember this movie I saw the way I saw this, because like at that point, I just remember there being X-Men movies and me kind of not being all the way invested in them anymore. Like I was just like,
they fell off big time.
I just was not invested in them. So I saw this movie as like it was on in a room that we were in. Like one of my friends had it. They put it on. We were there to like hang out. And so like I saw scenes. So some of the stuff you're saying I'm remembering, but like how it all fits together, I could not tell you because it was just like on in a room and I was like eating chips.
Yeah, it's not a good movie, and it's widely regarded as one of the worst X-Men movies ever, and rightfully so. So I don't know what it is about ending things, but it seems like in general that is one of my biggest gripes with every genre of fantasy, be it anime.
Hard to end things.
It's hard to end things. Like a lot of things end poorly. And again, Game of Thrones, Naruto, like there's a lot of Bleach. There's a lot of things that just kind of end. Like, what is happening? Like, how did this ending? How do we get here? Why does it seems like the writer sometimes is just rushing to a conclusion and things don't make sense at the end, even though the journey itself can be amazing. So one of the things that I enjoy as a person, and I always have since I was a child, despite the fact that I'm absolutely frightened sometimes, but the horror genre, period, the entire thing. This year, Halloween Ends came out, and I like the Michael Myers movies. I grew up with them. I grew up with the Chucky movies. I grew up with Freddy Krueger. I grew up with Candyman and Jason and all these things, right? So they rebooted Halloween, and they're using all the same actors, Jamie Lee Curtis, and whoever plays Michael Myers doesn't really matter because he's under a mask anyway. But Jamie Lee Curtis is the main character again. She's an old woman. She has a family. She has a daughter who has a daughter. And there's this whole thing going on, but the first two movies were whatever, but I actually can tolerate them and I could even watch them again. This one though, Halloween Ends, the one that just came out this year, the end of the trilogy, is by far, Kenny, the absolute worst Halloween movie I've ever seen. And I don't even know how they got so many things wrong. So let's start off with the most egregious thing. Michael Myers is in the movie for a total screen time of 12 minutes.
Oh, so this is like the reboot Godzilla 1.
Yes.
Like that first Godzilla movie where like, I'm here to see big monsters, and Godzilla is in the movie like in total maybe 12 minutes, 10 minutes, like if that.
Yes, total screen time for Michael Myers and Halloween Ends is about 12 minutes. So what ends up happening in the entire movie is there's this kid that they focus the entire movie on. He was not in any other movie. He's completely a new character, introduced at the end of a trilogy. So that's already, if you know anything about writing 101, if you know anything about ending something, you should not introduce a character that's that important this late in the game. The whole premise is that this guy that they introduced is becoming a Michael Myers. He has darkness in his heart, and he essentially is descending into becoming a murderer. And he goes to Michael Myers, who's for some reason in a sewer, just kind of hiding away, eating rats and shit. He goes to Michael Myers, who's in a sewer after the second movie, and he asks him to teach me how to be like you, show me how to do it. And they get into an actual fist fight. Michael Myers, by the way, I don't know if people remember, but he can pick people up with one hand. He can impale them with the other. He can literally rip your head off your body. He can snap your neck with one arm. Like, he can do a lot of ridiculous strength feats. This regular human man, who not even, like, this is, the kid is a young 20-year-old, and he's not Diesel or anything. He gets to a fight with Michael Myers and he wins. Flat out. Like, he flat out fights Michael Myers. Not only does he survive the altercation, which is wild in itself that he survives it, but he just flat out leaves Michael Myers on his ass and runs out the sewer. It is wild. And
so he asked Michael Myers to like train him.
Yes.
and then he beats him in a fight, like beats him, and then like it's just insane because it's like, well, I just watched however many Halloween movies there are, and like this was never even this wasn't even remotely possible.
No, it was never remotely possible. Honestly, in any of them, Michael Myers could never physically be beat by a person 1-on-1. That was just always the thing that if you fought Michael Myers, even with a weapon, 1-on-1, you're going to lose eventually. Like there's no fight. He's so ridiculously strong. And so it just made no sense to not only introduce this character, but have this character beat Michael. And then to have Michael only come in really in the last 30 minutes, Michael appears and he starts going on a killing spree. But the killing spree is so quick and corny. He kills like a group of teenage kids who have been teasing the other guy. So the main character of the movie, the guy I've been talking about, he basically suffers from being teased by other kids. He's an outcast. And they're kind of doing this mental illness thing, I want to say, where like I snapped because I was treated bad. And that made me into a killer, is kind of what the movie's tone is doing. I don't really like that tone. I don't really like that excuse for people becoming murderers, because that's just not how that should work. But that is what's happening in the movie. He's being teased, picked on. He feels like he doesn't belong in his town anymore. And so he wants to, I guess, exact his revenge. Michael ends up killing all of this group of 4 kids. He ends up killing the whole group of 4 kids in like a really brutal way. He goes to a radio station. He kills a guy that made fun of the kid earlier in the movie. It's just bad. Like, it's just really, Michael's basically going around killing everybody that the guy wants to die. Like, this kid has been treated poorly throughout the movie by people, and everyone who's treating him poorly, Michael goes around and kills that person in the last 30 minutes. It is not good. It is very rushed. Jamie Lee Curtis's role is also terrible. She feels bad because everyone in the town blames her for resurrecting Michael Myers, and you brought him to this town. You're the reason why my sister got killed. You're the reason why my auntie got, so this one lady did survive, but she survived and she can no longer speak because Michael jammed a light bulb that he broke and made it sharp. He jammed one of those long tube light bulbs into her throat. She somehow survived the encounter, but she can never speak again. Her quality of life is terrible, obviously. So Jamie Lee Curtis is in a supermarket at one point in the movie, and this older black lady comes up to her and is like, "Oh, it's you. You're the reason why my aunt or my sister or whatever, you're the reason why she can no longer speak ever again. You're the reason why that freak is back in town and came back and slaughtered all those people. It's all your fault." And like people started to walk towards Jamie Lee Curtis and she runs away. It's so bad. Like even what I'm saying and having to repeat it sounds made up and ridiculous. It just sounds awful. And I happen to like the horror genre. But lately, the horror genre it's always been hit or miss. I'm not going to act like the horror genre has been some great thing throughout history, because horror movies typically are kind of cringe a lot of the times, but some of them do it right. The older Stephen King movies, they were good. Like I will stand by it. Like some of them are genuinely good.
It is a very hit or miss genre, and this is kind of a problem as things progress and they become more understood and more produced and more Hollywood and whatever, and they've realized what works.
Yeah.
Sometimes you get, instead of getting art, you get just something. You get a production, and this movie sounds like it was just kind of like a production. You know what I mean? Instead of it being somebody's vision, something somebody was excited to make, it just sounds like a movie they made because like they wanted to put a Halloween movie in the theaters in October and make money.
Yep. It really sucks. And honestly, the whole trilogy for this Halloween wasn't good, but the first
I've only seen the first one of the new trilogy. Yeah. I've only seen the first one.
Yeah, they're not anything amazing, but I was excited. I was anticipating a reboot to Michael Myers. It's a really good, honestly, again, the same way I feel about other things that I've said in this podcast in terms of like Venom, for example, doesn't necessarily mean that it can't have a good movie. Like Venom can definitely get, if you get a good scriptwriter, I believe that Venom can have a good movie. I believe that Michael Myers can also have a good trilogy. This just was not it. It was really poorly done. And this brings me to my next horror movie that I seen in the last 5 years. I don't know exactly when it came out, but they rebooted like my childhood favorite, Chucky. Chucky got rebooted in the last 5 years, and it was terrible. And the reason why it was terrible was actually extremely simple. It was a robot.
Say that.
Wait, it was a robot. They made him into an actual robot. So like instead of Chucky being a doll that you go to the store and you buy, like the good guy doll that he used to be, they rebooted him and he's an actual mechanical like robot thing with like it's so bad. He's literally a robot. I don't even know what else to say. Like he's made in a factory. So
stupid.
It's so bad. He's made in a factory and he has all these mechanical robotic parts.
He's like the Terminator?
Yeah, he's like a little Terminator thing, and it just doesn't have the. So you remember how in the original Child's Play movies, Chucky used to be creepy looking even when in his doll form. You know how he has like a form where he's, you could tell he's active, he's human, and then he has a form where he's just a doll. I think even the doll used to look creepy, right?
No, Chucky was a good. I actually think now it's been a long time since I've seen it, but the original Chucky movie and movies, I think they are good examples of a horror movie because they're cheesy and campy sort of, but I think they successfully did what they needed to do. They created this atmosphere that was really creepy and awkward and tense, especially if you're a child. Like if you're a kid and you have dolls, you have dolls and action figures and things like that. And like sometimes they do look real. Sometimes like the eyes, those lifeless eyes, like it just looks weird and creepy. And like at nighttime when the lights are off and you're walking around, you're not supposed to be walking around and everybody's asleep. And like one of your dolls that fucking talk start making noises. Like that shit creeps you the fuck out.
I used to have a Tickle Me Elmo in my house. There was a Tickle Me Elmo in my house, and he got to a point where he would malfunction. He would just start talking for no reason. And it used to creep me out so much so that I eventually pulled the battery pack out of it because I was like, no, that's not okay.
This shit is weird.
So Chucky succeeded in doing what it was supposed to do. Being horror, and creeping people out.
It really made you feel that because like it created this creepiness. Now turning him into the Terminator is weird.
Yeah, so him becoming a robot was really corny to me because I don't understand why he just wouldn't remain like a typical doll made out of doll parts, like any other Child's Play movie. Why he needed to become mechanical, and why. So now when he becomes the evil Chucky, okay. So let me explain something else. In the original Child's Play, it's a human person whose soul was put into this doll using some kind of satanic ritual spell. He puts his soul into a doll to avoid being captured by police in the first movie. Like he's running around a toy store. Police are chasing him. They shoot him dead. But right before he dies, he grabs one of the dolls in the store, puts his hand on it, does this weird incantation like Ade, Due, Dembala. And everyone probably remembers that really funny little spell he used to do. But he does this spell and it puts his soul in a doll. So the entire premise of all the original Chucky movies was that a human person is a serial killer human person is inside of this doll, and he's chasing around this kid named Andy because he wants to take Andy's soul, put Andy's soul in a doll, and then take Andy's body and put his soul into Andy's. So he wants to become human again, essentially, is what he wants to do, but he doesn't want to become a grown man. He wants to do it to a child. He wants to become a child and like grow up again and stuff like that. Basically a second shot at life. He wants to do the Orochimaru. It's actually pretty cool premise. Because honestly, like I don't, this is really morbid, but I don't want to die. I would like to just remain living and experience all of the pleasures of life forever. Like I would want to stay on this planet until this planet can no longer handle humans. And so that being said, I understand like the motivations for wanting to live on. I don't get the serial killer part, but I would just want to live on just because living on just seems like the right thing to do. I mean, imagine someone, unfortunately, who died before Game of Thrones ended, or like they died before we got to see like God of War 2018 or something, whatever it is, right? Like things keep coming out, Infinity War, Endgame, all these things that we've seen in our lives. Imagine not being here to experience those things. And the thought of that really sucks, that eventually we will not be here and great things will continue to happen.
Something happens and I get in an accident and I die before the end of One Piece, like y'all getting haunted. All right.
Oh, absolutely.
Y'all getting haunted.
I'm Brooks on that ass. Like I'm definitely Brooks. But yes, so that was the original premise. The new premise is that the very beginning of the reboot, one where Chucky's a robot, there's a disgruntled Korean factory worker who's in the factory making these good guy dolls. He gets fired. He gets cursed out by his boss and he gets fired. On his way out, he programs one of the Chucky dolls to be evil. So normally when they program them, they make them, good and funny and stuff like that. He programs this one to kill. He gives it the emotions of anger. He puts all of the bad human emotions in the programming. So there's no human inside this doll. It's just a robot that was programmed to behave in a bad way. So eventually in the movie, when the kid gets the doll and it starts doing bad things, one, It doesn't do what I think is the most iconic thing about Chucky movies is the human form. It's when he looks like he actually has, like the way his face moves and everything. They actually switch out the doll completely in the originals. Like they would show it as a doll first, but then when he's in his killer mode, when he's in his Charles Lee Ray, because that's his real name, when he's in Charles Lee Ray mode, it's a completely different doll. Is the doll has like a fleshy looking skin texture to it, the eyeballs and everything about it looks way more human, and it makes it creepy as fuck. In this one, he doesn't actually have two different dolls, two different forms. His eyes just flip behind him and they become red. So instead of his normal blue eyes that he has, his eyes just go behind.
And they come so out fucking corny.
Yeah, and they're just red eyes. They just spin. You know how like some dolls have that thing where they blink or whatever. His blink, they become the color red, and that's how you know when he's in killer mode. And it is so bad.
The idea of like the robot with the eyes turning red. It's not corny in its own right. I mean, it's been done a lot, but it's just the fact that that's like that it's a reimagination of Chucky. Like it's so bad. Like it's just not. It's just not what was advertised on the box. So wait, is this a movie?
It is a movie, and I know that there's a Chucky show now. I've never seen it, but I want to watch it.
I saw on a couple. It feels like it wasn't that long ago, but I think at this point it's been months ago. I was browsing Hulu and I saw there was a new Chucky on Hulu, and so I clicked it. And then I realized it wasn't a movie. It was like a TV series or a show or whatever. And I was like, holy shit, there's a Chucky show? So I was wondering if this was that show or if this was a movie. I wonder if that show is related to that movie or if it's its own thing. I don't know.
Hope to God that it is not based on the reboot where he is a robot, because it would just be awful. Like, there's no other way to put it. It would just be awful. The premise of that movie was bad. I'm sure it tanked in the theaters. I'm sure it tanked on Rotten Tomatoes and IMDb and Metacritic. Like, there's no redeeming quality about it. And when I went to go see it, me and my...
Google it, actually. I just want to see what it looks like.
Me and my friends, we literally just kind of laughed and made fun of the movie the entire time because it was that bad. And, like, people in the theater were doing the exact same thing. Normally, I hate when people talk during my movie. But, like, this movie was so cringe that you didn't have a choice to be like, oh, calm the fuck on. Like, it, a lot of that during the movie. So... yeah, I didn't like it. Another bad horror movie that recently got rebooted, and I'm starting to realize that maybe reboots in general are just a problem with horror because they just don't do them right. But Candyman got rebooted last year or 2 years ago. It was bad. Like, I'm gonna just be honest. I know that they were trying to go for this, like, first of all, it had this, and maybe the original had it too, but it had this really hardcore racial undertone about how he was killed, he was discriminated against, and some white police officers, like, said that he was a child toucher or something, and so they gunned him down, but it wasn't true, and so he kind of haunts this place. And so you got this main character who ends up essentially throughout the whole movie, he's a painter, and the spirit of Candyman possesses him, and throughout the movie he's slowly decaying, like his actual flesh is decaying throughout the movie. But on top of that, he's also killing people. And when he kills people, he doesn't remember what he did the night before. So, like, the spirit is taking over and it's him killing people, but, like, he doesn't remember doing it. He wakes up and he's like, oh shit, how did I get these scars? Because the person who he killed last, like, scratched him. He wakes up with a scratch in the same spot. And so he's scared of himself. And the entire premise is bad. The killings are not good. I could do without the whole racial motivations. It's just not necessary. It's not a good reboot. And... yeah.
What you said was, you said maybe reboots in general are bad, and it's kind of a thing where the problem is, I do think the way you got to do a reboot is you got to make it a spiritual successor. Like, just doing a reboot or an adaptation a lot of times, like, I'm not going to say this was a disappointment because I never expected it to be good as soon as I saw it, but like the Netflix Death Note movie, right?
Oh,
that movie is horrible.
Yeah, but there was no anticipation of it being good.
It's a really bad adaptation. Yeah, there was no anticipation of it being good when you saw the trailers. But
yeah,
Death Note in general is something
yes,
that you could anticipate to be a really good movie. There's no reason why it couldn't work as a live action movie.
No question.
But I don't think the answer is to like fully adapt the story of Death Note, like L and Light. Instead, just like take what Death Note is and then create a new story out of it that like feels really honest.
Oh, that's a good idea. Yeah, I agree. That's a good idea.
Like that's what I want more. That's what I want more reboots to try to do.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think that rebooting, the way they're doing it, they reboot, but then they change the core of it. And I'm not understanding why that's a thing. Like, why are you changing it so hard at the core of what it is? Like, Chucky should not be a robot that was some Korean guy who got fired from it. Some disgruntled employee programmed it to be a killer. A robot that's that small being programmed to kill people is just so far-fetched and so ridiculous. The very premise of it isn't even good. So I can't really take it seriously.
I almost want to see it now, just to laugh at it, like a bad movie night kind of thing.
I was about to say, it's perfect for a bad movie night. Like, if we ever do a bad movie night, we have a list of movies that we could watch for bad movie night, Morbius being one of them. But if we ever did a bad movie night, like, it for sure is in contention for that. Like, it's something that you can laugh at. And honestly, the entire Halloween trilogy, the one that was rebooted and I was talking about, that entire trilogy is up for bad movie night as well, because it's just not good.
On another note of movies, not horror movies, but this is something that I can legitimately say I anticipated it before I saw any trailers for it, but like something that I wanted, and this is before I was old enough to know. But when I was little, I wanted a Dragon Ball movie.
God.
I wanted a Dragon Ball Z movie when I was little. I was too young to realize I didn't know what I was asking.
Live action, you mean? Yeah.
Yeah, a live action one. Like, I was too young to know that you don't know what you're asking for. And then when we got Dragon Ball Evolution, the trailers came out, and at this point, once again, it's not something I saw how bad it was from the trailers.
Yeah.
But we all went to go see it, like 8 of us, I think, and like it was horrible. There's not much to say about it. The movie's horrible, but it's like one of those instances where it's like before I knew what it was, I did anticipate it. But boy, oh boy, did I not like what I got.
Yeah, the Dragon Ball Evolution movie was really bad. The Avatar movie was really bad.
The Last Airbender. Once again, though, I love The Last Airbender. That cartoon is incredible.
One of the best.
Once again,
we need to do an episode on that.
We do. It's something that I think could easily be adapted into live action, because even though there's powers, I don't think the powers are so far-fetched that they'd be too hard to do on the big screen. I think they easily could. They've done fire and wind. Like, I don't think it's impossible to do those, especially after seeing like the Marvel movies, right?
Yeah.
Where you could do those powers. But then on top of that, the powers aside, Avatar is more of like a kung fu thing. Like they fight. Like, if you just made like
they definitely use martial arts for sure. Like, it's a martial arts. Yeah.
Like, if you did like a Shang-Chi, like if you got the director of Shang-Chi, to do an Avatar movie, like, I think we would get a really good Last Airbender movie. But instead, we got fucking M. Night Shyamalan, and
he's literally the director, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, not even joking. He actually is the director. Yeah, it's bad. Oh, yeah, I'm not a fan. Those movies are bad. I guess to keep it in because I'm going to move out of movies, we're going to eventually move into video games, like we said, Final Fantasy 13. But to keep it in movies, I saw recently this movie that I really thought was going to be amazing called The Menu. And it just was not good. It is about so it's super pretentious. It's about like a very, 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 very rich restaurant that only the highest of the high elites in society can go to. There's this chef who's like a Gordon Ramsay type, very aggressive, very mean, but he makes the best food. And it's all about the experience when the guests arrive. But the movie is just a rant because it's just one of the movies where wild things are happening for no reason at all. For example, at one point he serves them bread and he serves them a bunch of different sauces that like go with bread, right? But then they actually never get bread. They get a note instead that says, this is the absence of bread. This is just the things that usually accompany bread. And you're supposed to just eat all the little sauces, and that's it. There's no actual bread, but this is this dish is the bread course, but there's no actual bread on your plate. And so the main character, who's actually the girl from The Queen's Gambit, she's the main character from The Queen's Gambit. I forget her name. She's the main character of this movie.
Anya Taylor-Joy, right?
Yes. So she is like not a rich girl, but she's dating a rich guy. She lives a regular life. Like, she's like a regular person. So obviously, like any other regular person, she's like, what the fuck is this? She's like, this is nothing. Like, I'm hungry. She's like, I'm fucking hungry. This isn't real. How are you going to say this is the bread course and there's no actual bread? And she's like, this is far too pretentious for me. This isn't my thing. So the chef gets really offended and he's like, how do you not like my food? How do you not like this experience? This is like the highest of the high. And all these other rich people are like offended that she feels this way and stuff. But it gets to a point, the movie starts taking some wild turns, like really wild. For example, at one point, one of the guys who's aspiring to be like the main the head chef guy. He calls him to the front and he's like, tell them how you want my job. So the guy's like, I really aspire to be like you, chef. And he starts crying as he's talking. He's like, but I've only been a fucking disappointment. And there's like an entree with the, like how you pull the top of an entree, like at a ritzy restaurant, and it's supposed to reveal a dish. There's a fucking pistol. And he's like, what are you going to do about your disappointment? And he's like, I'm going to kill myself, chef. And he grabs the gun and blows his brains out. And everyone thinks that it's a joke at first.
What the fuck?
Like, people freak the fuck out, but then some of them are like, oh, it has to be a joke, right? Like, it's not real. This is all part of the experience. But the guy literally blew his fucking brains out in front of everybody. And like, as the guy's preparing to do this, because you don't know where it's going as you're watching it, but the other chefs are like putting down white sheets on the floor next to the guy. And then the reason why they were doing that is because they know he's going to blow his brains out at the end of this whole thing. So he kills himself.
Supposed to be like a thriller? Like, what the fuck?
But I
can't figure out what genre this is as you're explaining it.
It's really bad. I don't even know what genre it is either, because the movie is all over the place. There's another part where the head chef, the Gordon Ramsay guy, he is partners with this billionaire guy who actually funds the restaurant and is the reason why he's able to have such this crazy, because the restaurant's on an island. You can only get there by invitation. You have to be sent a plane. Everybody who's there is sent a plane to get to this island where the restaurant is located. So it's a billionaire who's funding it. And apparently the billionaire and the Gordon Ramsay guy don't get along. So at one point during the movie, they lift up the blinds, because in the restaurant, you can't see the outside. They lift up the blinds. You can see the outside. You can see the ocean. And like, you see a helicopter or some shit dangling a man who has gigantic angel wings attached to his body, and he's gagged. He can't speak. He's gagged, he's tied up, and he's dangling in the air above the ocean. And he's like, I want to direct your attention to the outside. And everybody turns around, they look outside, and they see this man dangling with angel wings on, attached to his body. And he's like, this is my partner, my business partner who's been funding my restaurant. He's been a thorn in my side, whatever like that. And so slowly but surely, the helicopter lowers itself and the guy drowns. And as he's drowning, he's like struggling as he's being submerged in water, and everyone's watching it in horror in the restaurant. And eventually the guy dies. And that's just that. He's like, now I am the sole owner of this restaurant. It is fucking nonsense. And it has a high score. It has a high score on Rotten Tomatoes. And a lot of people think that, I guess, it's somehow good, but I think that you people want attention. It has an 89% on Rotten Tomatoes. When I went to go see it, it was at 92%. It is a fucking tragedy how bad this movie is.
What the fuck?
Now, if you go in and you're like, I just want to laugh, sure, you could find it funny, I guess. But it is like, it's really bad. The way she ends up beating the guy is she orders a cheeseburger from him. She's like, I bet you can't make something simple. Everything with you has to be this super complicated thing. So I dare you to make a cheeseburger, a regular cheeseburger. And he gets so offended that she says that he can't do it, that she ends up ordering a cheeseburger. And before he kills everybody in the restaurant, she says, I'll have it to go. So he has to let her go because she orders it to go. And so she escapes when everyone else kills themselves in the restaurant. And it is, when I tell you that it's all over the place, it doesn't even sound like I'm making sense right now, but that's because the movie doesn't make sense.
What am I hearing?
It's so bad, dog. It's so fucking bad. It is so outrageously bad. So
I need to see this movie. I can't wait. I need to see this movie.
The trailer was actually really interesting and intriguing to me.
What the fuck?
The execution of the actual movie was garbage. I would never willingly watch it again unless it was, bad movie night and I want to laugh at it. But the actual premise, whatever it was trying to accomplish, whatever statement it was trying to make, whatever pretentious nonsense that you people tell yourselves to say that this was a good movie, I just didn't get that.
See, here's the thing, right? Movies, like, I don't know. It sounds like, and I didn't see this movie, but there's a level of like realism in movies because we're looking at real people, right? As opposed to like cartoons and anime, when you watch a movie, you're looking at real people that you know exist. Yes. So now it is a movie, it's fiction, but there's a level of like expected realism, especially when it's set in a simple setting. Now, obviously when you look at a Marvel movie, you're not expecting realism because like it's magic. But if the movie's about going to like a rich restaurant, like when it starts to become like some absurd thing where people are killing themselves in the middle of the restaurant and people are dangling out of helicopter, like, I don't know. It sounds like it fucking just jumps the shark. Which is a classic fucking the Fonz. It just when the nonsense starts happening, it's like, what the it just becomes really hard and it takes you out of it when something that feels realistic, it becomes complete nonsense. It's like, could this ever happen in real life? I don't think so. I don't think it could.
I'm not a fan of, and that's how I felt. Like a guy just blew his brains out in front of everybody, and I'm supposed to believe that this is something that every single person.
The loophole is like you order to go, so like, all right, fine, you're allowed to go. Like, what the fuck?
And yeah, it just didn't make sense. It was really bad, and I anticipated this movie. I thought it was going to be good, but it was awful. So I think that as far as movies go, I also have Doctor Strange 2 up here, like Multiverse of Madness, because the trailer for that movie actually looked insane. It did not end up being nearly as good as the trailers made it look, and I would not willingly watch Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness again. Again, it would only be a bad movie night type of scenario, but I would not just be like, you know what? I'm bored. Out of all the Marvel movies I could possibly watch, I specifically want to watch Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness again. I would not willingly watch it again. So that one is another one that I feel like was a disappointment compared to what it could have been, because honestly, I think Doctor Strange is one of the coolest heroes there is. I just think he's like so fucking cool. I love the fact that he's a magician or sorcerer, and that he's the highest of the high, and he's all these cool abilities and stuff. But then the execution of the writing and the movie itself, you know, it looked beautiful. Like the actual CG I thought was cool, even though I think some people did say they had problems with that too, but I thought it looked nice. But outside of that, it just was the whole dead body, him walking into a dead body at some point that he killed earlier in the movie, and you kind of knew that's where it was going. Like a lot of that stuff, the rock music randomly, them fight with musical note, it was just a lot. Like I feel like a lot was going on. And the only thing that I thought was cool about the movie, honestly, was the aspect of, if you watched the little Marvel shows, there was one episode where Doctor Strange kept trying to save the love of his life from dying in a car accident. And because he did that, because he kept going further and further to achieve that goal, he ended up completely destroying his universe. And it was the first episode where a watcher, one of the people who do not intervene, they just watch. It's kind of funny. Their names are so blatantly that. But one of them was like, he pleaded, said, can you please help me? I know you're out there. I can feel your presence. And the watcher said, I've watched you go to any means possible to achieve this goal, and the universe has told you multiple times that you can't save her. She has to die, right? But you kept trying to save her, and now look at what you've done. Why would I save you now? Because if I save you, I'll risk exposing other universes to your folly. And so the episode ends with him just in what we now know is an incursion, I think is what they call it. In Multiverse of Madness, we get a term for what he did to that verse. I feel like the Doctor Strange you end up seeing in Multiverse of Madness is that Doctor Strange, because he wants the real Doctor Strange's wife, like, or not his wife, but the girl that he's in love with. He wants her, and so it makes sense that like that is the premise of who he is. But they never blatantly say that's the same one. But anyways, I think that the movie's premise of Wanda like being angry about her own children, her goal to steal another Wanda's universe's children, is ridiculous. I still stand by that, and for me, it was a big disappointment. It's not the worst movie I've ever seen. It's not the worst Marvel movie I've ever seen by any means. But it just, if I'm saying like, it was disappointing when I walked out of the theater, and I knew that going into it, that the trailers showed like Professor Xavier and Black Bolt and fucking all these other crazy heroes that have not been premiered at all in a live action movie. To use Black Bolt like that, to use Professor X and stuff, it just was not good. So those are my gripes with that. And that's kind of, I think that's it for movies that, oh wait, I'm lying. I have one on here that is,
you got all kinds of movies.
I got one more, and this one.
All right, hold on. Before that one,
go ahead.
I'll do so. This isn't a movie, but it's a TV show.
Go ahead.
And well, I guess not a TV show. It's a Netflix show. And although, unlike the rest of the internet, I've expressed that I actually think it's a lot better than the internet says. It is still overall a disappointment, specifically what they did to Vicious and Julia and that storyline.
Yeah.
And that's the Cowboy Bebop live action. Cowboy Bebop is, once again, it's an anime, and once again, I don't expect One Piece. So, like, for example, when the One Piece Netflix show was bad, I won't be disappointed because I already know it's going to be bad, because I don't think One Piece is very adaptable. I think
agree.
It's going to be very hard to adapt.
I hard agree.
But Cowboy Bebop, I think, is one of the easiest anime ever to adapt. And I think they did overall a pretty good job. But
I agree. We did an episode on that. So if you haven't heard our episode on Cowboy Bebop, it was on the anime and the Netflix show. I think they did a lot of things well. The atmosphere of the show, like the way they adapted a lot of that stuff, the space traveling, space cowboy. I think that the casting was pretty good outside of Vicious. And it's not even necessarily that the actor is bad; is that his wig was bad. His wig was
his wig and his script. It was his wig and his script.
Yes, the script they wrote for him was really bad. But I don't think that actor and everything he's been in is just garbage. I think that more so he just didn't have anything to work with.
Yeah, and that was just a big disappointment for me because even though I do think there's a lot of that show that I enjoyed, what they did with Vicious and Julia's storyline as a whole was really fucking bad.
Yeah,
and very disappointing and just like
egregious.
It just like if you take them, and the problem is they made their role so much bigger. And original Cowboy Bebop, they're not in it that much.
No, they're not.
And they made their role so much bigger, put them in so much more of it, and then also made it worse. So it's like, whereas everything not including them, I've liked a lot. Like 8 out of 10, 9 out of 10, 7 out of 10. Like upper echelon, I liked. And then everything with them was like 3 out of 10, 2 out of 10, and it was really bad. And it ends up really tanking the score of the overall show and the overall experience.
It brings the whole thing down. Then it got canceled immediately after we did the podcast. So
yeah.
But
big disappointment there.
The other one for me is the Green Lantern movie with Ryan Reynolds from way back in the day.
Oh shit.
So I like Green Lantern as a hero in general because when I grew up, I used to watch Justice League, and Green Lantern I think is like Hal Jordan is just one of the fucking coolest, or whatever version of him they were using. But I think in general, Green Lantern is one of the coolest heroes ever. Like he has a ring that can create anything as long as his mind can believe it. And he's like weak to the color yellow and fear and all this other bullshit. But like, I think the premise of him is really dope. And every time people would ask when I was younger, like if you could be any of the Justice League people, if we weren't being ignorant and saying like Superman or Flash, Green Lantern was definitely one of the ones that like, yeah, I definitely want to be Green Lantern. I like the idea of having this ring that can just create things. And its only limitation is actually my mind. That is a really broken ability.
Green Lantern is definitely a cool ability / power / hero.
Yes. For whatever reason though, the actual DC film starring Ryan Reynolds was just one of the worst things I've ever seen as far as hero movies go, and in movies in general. It was really bad. So for me to be anticipating a Green Lantern movie, loving the actual hero, and to get that in response was just sad. And that's really all I have to say about it. Is like that movie is just awful. It's what Ryan Reynolds even makes fun of it. He like not regrets, I shouldn't say, because like everything is a part of your journey. He eventually becomes Deadpool, and I think Deadpool 1 was a fantastic movie. And it's exactly what Ryan Reynolds should have been doing, is a comedic character, because I consider him to be a comedic actor.
Yeah.
But like how I was saying, Will Smith is a comedic actor, and he can play serious roles, but I think that some of his best roles are like him being funny. Like Bad Boys Will Smith is hilarious. That he's hilarious. Men in Black Will Smith is fucking hilarious, right? So he's really good at being a comedic actor. And Ryan Reynolds is amazing at being a comedic actor. If I had to watch a movie where Ryan Reynolds is trying to play serious, I don't know how much I can believe him. And maybe I just have to be shown that he can do it, because like Kevin Hart's did serious roles recently, and I heard that they were pretty decent. But like,
oh my god, you still have to see True Story.
Yeah, I haven't watched that yet.
Dude, it's legitimately good. Like, I'm not lying to you.
I want to believe you. It's really hard to though, because I can't imagine Kevin Hart acting in a serious role. But like, I'll give it a try.
Yeah, True Story. It's Kevin Hart and Wesley Snipes. It's good.
I'll give it a try, because like I do trust your opinion on things, but like in my head, my mind, which is obviously my biggest, like that's the biggest opinion, is like what I think, right? Dude, it's really I
want you to watch it, because here's the thing: you need to watch it, right? And then we can do an episode on it, and then either it'll be us just talking about how good it is and how surprising it is that it's good Kevin Hart playing a serious role, or it'll be a part 2 to this episode, and Fraser will talk about how fucking disappointing it is and that Kenny lied to him.
Yeah, so that's all I got to really say about that Ryan Reynolds thing, though. And I will watch True Story at some point. Right now, I'm finishing up The Crown season 5, and I still need to go through God of War Ragnarok. I'm still pretty early on in that game, but those are like my immediate things. But yeah, that's on like my long list of things to watch at some point.
Yeah, and then unless something pops in our head in terms of like live action TV and movies, we can wrap up that part of the segment before we go into video games. I just want to quickly note, we already noted it, and we don't got to talk about it because we've talked about it a lot, but season 8 of Game of Thrones. All right, cool.
Yeah, like I have Game of Thrones on my list, but we do not need to actually rehash how much of a disappointment Game of Thrones was. If you listen to this podcast for any capacity, you already know how we feel about it. It was a terrible ending, but it doesn't mean you throw away the whole show. Game of Thrones is still, for me, it's still my favorite show ever. But the ending of it is really, really a shame. and I will continue to rewatch Game of Thrones every year, every other year, something like that, because those first 6 seasons are cracked out of this world, and then it nosedives. But yes, that opinion has been stated on this podcast many times, and we could just move right along. So while House of the Dragon was amazing, like literally season 1, I would consider season 1 of House of the Dragon to be in the top 4 of all, if all the Game of Thrones, like, so all 8 seasons of Game of Thrones and House of the Dragon, they were all kind of like one genre, right? Like one list.
Yeah, so 9 seasons.
9 seasons total. House of the Dragon season 1 would be in the top 4 of all Game of Thrones like seasons for me. Like I think it was really, I think it was really, really that good. And also it has the hindsight of a successful show and a unsuccessful show at the end. Like they knew what not to do, and they knew what made Game of Thrones good, and they, you know what I mean. So they had the hindsight of that, and so they used a lot of it. It's not the best season of all of them, but it will be in the top 4, and I don't even know where I would place it, but it definitely is on the higher end. Like it's in the top end.
Yeah, I agree with that.
It's
like I can't tell you whether it's 1, 2, 3, or 4. But like, I don't think it's 1, but like maybe it is, but it's probably not.
It could be anywhere. It's too soon to say, but it's definitely
maybe 4, but it's definitely not in the lower half.
It's definitely not in the lower half. And I think when I just look at episode 7, because it's only one season. When I look at like episode 7, the episode where Rhaenyra's like, now they see you for who you are, shit like that. That episode, start to finish. Also, episode 8, right after that, where Viserys has that, I will sit on the Iron Throne. I will sit atop the Iron Throne today. That like him walking in, and how that walk literally took probably 4 minutes to just see the walk. Like 4 minutes of this old man walking through, and everyone just being surprised that he can even do that. And then Otto sharing a look with the brother of Corlys Velaryon, and how they expected to do this little nasty plot against Rhaenyra to steal Driftmark from her, and then it doesn't work out. That whole, everything about that scene, and then the crown falling off his head, they've been picking it up. That alone, like those 2 episodes alone, 7 and 8 alone, with nothing else, literally puts it in the top half of all Game of Thrones for me. So that's kind of how I feel about that. But I brought this up to say, while House of the Dragon was amazing, there was another show airing at the exact same time that decided it wanted to compete with it. And I'm not really sure. I'm not sure why it wanted to directly compete with it. I won't spoil it for you. I don't know why I wanted to compete with Game of Thrones. It was a very strange thing. Maybe I thought that like people would be more inclined to watch it if it aired with something as big as Game of Thrones, which is kind of true. So I get it from that perspective. Like if you put it next to
because that was the talk. Like that, you're talking about the Lord of the Rings show, right?
Yeah, I'm talking. So Rings of Power is the show that I'm talking about.
At that time, like both of those shows aired. And like they were talked about because like they're the same genre-ish, like
fantasy, sort of dragons, swords, fighting big wars with swords, and magic is in the world, kingdoms and all that stuff. First of his name.
So they're definitely they were talked about a lot in tandem.
Yeah,
and just brought up together. So
yes. So
I guess what you're saying is true. Like it did work in that the fact that it aired alongside Game of Thrones made people talk about it more, possibly.
Yes,
because it just felt like that was the air in the room.
Yes. The problem with that is, though, House of the Dragon blew everything out the water during those 10 weeks. And Rings of Power being one, it was only 8 episodes. So Rings of Power is shorter. But those 8 episodes were nowhere near the level of House of the Dragon. There was one episode in Rings of Power that was absolutely fucking insane, like cracked out of its mind. And I will watch that episode over and over again because it was really, really, really good. Like really good. They also pay $60 million an episode, which is twice the second highest. Stranger Things season 4 was $30 million an episode on average. They pay $60 million an episode for Rings of Power. And I'm gonna be honest, while the show does look amazing, I don't get $60 million an episode out of that show. I think that they got
so
I think Jeff Bezos got juiced. I think he got juiced because people know that he's the richest man in the world, or one of the richest men in the world, top 2, and he's not 2 type of vibe. Like him and Elon Musk go back and forth. I think that he got juiced.
Not after Twitter, maybe. Elon might be losing it all.
That's why, yeah. But I think Elon's wealth is just gonna skyrocket again in the next 5 years. But that's a different conversation. But yes, they go back and forth. My point is, I don't see 60 million. I think that he got overcharged. I think that the invoices, like when the production invoices come in, like the visual effects and the stage design and the costume design, I think that all of that stuff, they probably would just put an extra 0 on everything. Like, because they were like, look, if Papa Jeff is backing this, like we could just put an extra 0 on literally everything and see if it gets approved. And I think everything has got approved, right? So
that's insane.
I just don't think that the writing for it was cohesive. The main character Galadriel, like, she is robotic as fuck. not really a big fan of her as a main character carrying a series like this. And also, I heard that this show deviates a bit from Tolkien's actual writing, and like they start doing their own thing, which is always a little sketchy. Sometimes you can deviate and it not be terrible. Like the original Game of Thrones was not a 1-to-1 of the books, but most of it is, and it always arrives at the same place until the last seasons where they don't have any more things to do an adaptation on.
And even then, a lot of times the things they change, they like. Not everything, but they change a lot of things for the better. Like, even George R.R. has said that the show made the character Shay better than what he did with Shay in the books.
He did say that. He did actually say, you have breathed life into Rhaenyra and Viserys, more life into them than I ever could have imagined. He said he's on record saying things like he said, when the episode Paddy Constantine dies in House of the Dragon, he says like, to Paddy, you made Viserys bigger than I ever could have imagined him being. Like, you breathe more life into this character. Yeah, I love that praise coming from the writer. It was just amazing, right? Like, he's like, I never imagined my Viserys to be what you made him into. And that, honestly, yes. At first, the first couple episodes, like Viserys to me, which is like this really weak person, this person who I'm like, oh my God, I can't stand this king. And then as the show goes on, I become sympathetic with him. And I love him more. But we have another episode of House of the Dragon coming up anyway, so we won't discuss all of those things right now, because in our next episode for House of the Dragon season 1, we were going to discuss like the characters, because we did a lot talking about the overarching story and how things panned out, but we didn't really talk about Daemon and Otto and those.
Yeah, it's crazy the amount of there was so much shit to cover.
Yes. 10 episodes is 10 hours of content, 10 plus hours actually, because some of the episodes are longer than an hour. So it's not surprising that we couldn't cover it in our like usually 2-hour podcast, but we will be revisiting that. But yeah, Rings of Power just kind of failed for me. I'll wait till Kenny sees it to fully. We can do an entire.
We'll do an episode on
because I mean it does deserve an episode, but I just think that it was not what it was hyped up to be essentially. So that's how I feel about that. Now, so Rings of Power was on my list. I also have like Naruto Shippuden's ending, highly anticipated. Naruto being one of the biggest anime of all time, and everyone knows we have an episode on that too. Naruto Shippuden, and it just did not end well.
It's crazy. I think I said this in the Naruto episode, but in case I didn't, I remember after Naruto ended, because like as it was not airing, but as it was coming out the chapters, and I was reading along with everybody else. And I remember the air in the room at the time was like, I'm just reading this because like I've already read it for 10 years.
Yes.
So like I might as well see the ending. Yep. It was a sunken cost fallacy, basically. Like we were all just sunken cost fallacying the end of Naruto. We were like, we already put so much time in, we might as well see it through to the end. But what's crazy is after Naruto was done, for whatever reason, this is years and years ago now, but for whatever reason, something happened that got me wanting to reread it. I think maybe I was watching Naruto with my brother, and like he was young. I mean, he's still young, but he was younger. He was like so into it, and it was making me get into it again. And so I restarted Naruto and read it from the beginning. And I honestly had a really easy read. Some arcs are weaker than others, but I had an easy read all the way through, pretty much until the start of the Great Ninja War. Right before the Great Ninja War, when Naruto is like training with Killer Bee, and he's like, and he like goes inside the QB and he gets to like meet his mom. Like that shit got a tear out of me. Like I really like got emotional with that part, rereading it, being a little bit older, and like kind of the implications of everything that's there, and like Minato sealing his wife in the soul of the QB so that Naruto could meet her later, and like not sealing himself. And I don't know, Naruto was for me an easy read and very enjoyable, pretty much from start till the end, till the last arc. And that last arc does so much wrong.
Naruto up until the last arc is one of the best written anime mangas ever. There's a reason why it is regarded as one of the most popular anime mangas ever. Like it is not just because like people are capping or hyping it up. The original Naruto series is honestly one of the best things I've ever experienced in my life. Like the original Naruto, when I first got into it, when I first read the manga, when I first watched the anime, the feelings I got from that are rivaled only by things like Game of Thrones and One Piece and shit like that. Like only the highest of the high can compete in the Naruto realm. Like that's how good Naruto is.
It was really good, and I didn't even think of it until you brought it up in terms of like adding it to this disappointment list. But for example, when I got to the end the first time, it was like whatever, I was already out of it. When I did that reread of it, I started to tell myself, oh, maybe I was wrong. Like maybe I was going with the crowd. Maybe the crowd convinced me the ending was bad. Yeah, that can happen. Groupthink is real. I was like, it can't be bad. I'm reading this shit's amazing. Like I'm rereading it. I'm older now. Like this is still good. And then I got to the end, and like what's so funny is an ending that I already knew existed. I started to get excited for, and I started to anticipate because I was like, maybe I was wrong. Yeah. And then I got there again, and I wasn't wrong. It was really bad, and it disappointed me all over again.
Them just getting rid of Madara is still, and I bring it up all the time, is still one of the most egregious things that has ever happened in a manga/anime. Madara was a great villain to end it off on. He could have literally been the last boss, and I just don't understand why he randomly, in the bottom of the knife, decided to become this character who you just found out about maybe 3 or 4 chapters beforehand, Kaguya. He becomes this character who has no speech at all. Black Zetsu speaks for her, but Kaguya herself doesn't actually really speak. She has no actual conversations or anything with the characters. Her motivations are not really clear outside of what's being communicated to you by Black Zetsu. It is so fucking bad. And the whole Indra and Ashura thing is bad too, like Naruto and Sasuke being descendants of these two ninjas and the reincarnations of them, basically saying that everything about their individuality is not real because they're just reincarnations of these two guys from a while ago that we never heard of until now. It was just so bad. And so
they're not even part of like the lore.
No, like Madara and Hashirama have statues built. They fought on those statues in episode 133, and it's some of the best anime you'll ever see. But Indra and Ashura have nothing.
Yeah, it's so weird because it felt like I truly believe, and this is joke that's been said a lot, that like the latest chapters were in the night before.
Yep.
I truly believe the end of Naruto was not planned, like even a little bit, because
I agree. I have to agree.
If you look at Naruto, it feels like Naruto and Sasuke are supposed to be representations of Madara and Hashirama.
Clearly,
and it's like
100%.
They're not reincarnations of them. They have their own agency and everything.
Yes, their own motivations.
But like they kind of continue what started with those two, but they're still their own people.
And the Uchiha. Yep.
And so it felt like that's who they were supposed to be representative of while still keeping their own agency.
Yes.
To once again in the bottom of the ninth, be like, oh no, they're actually descendants of like these two characters that you've never heard of, have no lore, no backstory, no mystery, no anything built like. And all the stories, all the foreshadowing woven into the story was just like, okay, that's all done. Here is this lady who created a devil fruit, and the devil fruit gave everybody chakra, and her kids are Naruto and Sasuke, and like that's the story. It's like, what the fuck is happening?
And then space aliens, and they're chasing her, and so in order to beat the space aliens, she fled to this planet, and she's been dormant ever since. And the entire story from start to finish has been Resurrection of Kaguya. The entire story. Everything you've ever read in Naruto from chapter 1 up until Shippuden. Actually, even before that, it even predates that because Black Zetsu apparently has been running the show before Naruto and Sasuke were born, clearly. Everything about the show you've seen has been predetermined and manipulated to this nasty plot to get Kaguya resurrected. It is so trash. And so that ending is the highly anticipated but very big disappointment, and that's why Naruto is in that conversation. But as far as Naruto before the Great Ninja War, before the way it ends, it is still one of the absolute best things. It's the reason why I don't think it's intelligent to throw away the entire Naruto series, the entire anime, just because it ended so poorly. Same thing with Game of Thrones. Like, yes, the ending wasn't good, but everything before that was actually just stellar and worthy of praise. Yeah. So that's kind of why it's there. Boruto, trash. I would say it's highly anticipated.
That, though?
That's what I was about to say. I would say it's highly anticipated, but I can't even be like, honestly, when Boruto was announced as something that was happening, because of how bad Naruto had already ended, I had no hopes for it to begin with. But I will say this: I didn't know it would be as bad as it is.
Dude, I was interested until I knew his name. I just think the name Boruto seems so dumb to me. Like I would rather his name be Jacob. Like I just don't understand why his name is Naruto with a B. Like I just don't.
Yeah, it doesn't sound cool. Naruto actually sounds cool.
Yeah. It's weird. I would rather him be like Naruto Jr. or something. Like that would be cheesy too. But I just don't get. Or maybe named after his maybe named like Minato, like maybe named after
That would have been cool
Naruto's
too.
dad. Like
And anything but Boruto.
Like what the fuck? And any of the Arutos, like if it was Baruto or Saruto or Jaruto, like he just shouldn't be an Aruto. Like it sounds so dumb.
It also doesn't inspire any fear. Like I'm gonna be honest, the name Boruto sounds like a parody name. So if people were in a fight with some really strong villains and they were waiting for Boruto to arrive, I couldn't take them seriously.
Yeah.
Like I just can't. Like you know how when Goku is on the way. Goku's on Snake Way, and it's taking him a very long time to get back to Earth. Like, the anticipation of Goku coming is like, yo, Goku's coming. Imagine people waiting for Boruto. Like, it just does not sound, it just doesn't sound good. It doesn't sound, he doesn't inspire fear. And so, for those reasons, I'm out. Okay, so we got Boruto, we got Naruto out the way. Game of Thrones, we did a little discussion on. Only thing left I got here is Final Fantasy 13 and Kingdom Hearts 3 now.
Okay. I've got a little something too, so
all right.
Go ahead.
I was going to do Kingdom Hearts 3 first. So Kingdom Hearts 3, this is really easy. The game took 12 years to make. We have been anticipating Kingdom Hearts 3 for like, so it's not necessarily that I think Kingdom Hearts 3 is a bad game.
This was on my list too.
I don't think Kingdom Hearts 3 is a bad game. Let's be clear about that. But I am going to rag on it a little bit because it took so long. The issue is that it took so long. If you were going to take a decade to make a game, right? The game should be phenomenal, in my opinion, especially when you're dealing with a phenomenal franchise already. It's not like this is something that they had to pull out of their ass and there's no background for it. Kingdom Hearts is amazing. Like Kingdom Hearts 1 and 2 and all the little side stories are amazing. There's a lot to build on there. But Kingdom Hearts 3 just kind of like, one, no Final Fantasy characters. That's not okay. Because that's the
identity of the original.
That's the identity. That's the essence of Kingdom Hearts, is the fucking Final Fantasy characters being a part of it. Like that's the very essence. There's no Sephiroth fight. There's no Final Fantasy.
Imagine if, because I've heard some people argue. Now I love Kingdom Hearts, and I do love Kingdom Hearts 3, but it's still on my disappointment list, and I'll explain why. But imagine if, because I've heard people say like Kingdom Hearts, with the characters introduced, has grown past the Final Fantasy characters, and it doesn't need the Final Fantasy characters. They're not necessarily integral to the story. But imagine if it was the same game, but they had no Disney characters. Like, it would be so weird. Like, imagine if Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, but instead the whole thing took place in Midgar, and, like, it was just Final Fantasy characters. You'd be like, I'm playing a Final Fantasy game. Like, I'm not playing... Like, there's a reason why Kingdom Hearts is what it is. It is this crazy mixture that shouldn't work. Final Fantasy and Disney, that does work, and it like feels really cool. And I love seeing like the goofiness of Goofy and Cloud on the same screen, and it ends up working really, really well.
And they've always been together. In the other series, they are just a part of the other games. Like they are also in the Game Boy Advance games and the fucking DS games. Like it's not a crazy concept that Final Fantasy characters be included in Kingdom Hearts. Like that is just the essence of the game. So for them to be missing is wild to me. But also on top of that, like the storyline of Kingdom Hearts 3 wasn't the strongest by any means. To this day, I feel like technically the progression that we made in that entire arc is really small, like towards the overarching story of Kingdom Hearts. I feel like the progression in that was just like not really that big. Like at the end of it, Kairi gets fucking taken, and like then Sora gets taken, and it's just like, what is happening? I just think that it's a little all over the place. The combat system, all that stuff, I mean, like they did a good job with all of that. Like honestly, the Keyblades transforming into drills and hammers and yo-yos, they did so many things well. But one, the game just felt like it wasn't 12 years in the making. And so when I can beat it in 24, 25 hours and actually I got like Ultimate Weapon and everything. Like I got everything. When I can beat it in like a legitimate under 30-hour period and I have unlocked everything I need to unlock, it's just kind of like, what is happening? Like I actually explored the game. I did everything I was supposed to do as far as unlocking things from the main story. And it's like, this took literally 10 years to make. Like this is a 10-year-old franchise that in the making. There's a 10-year gap between 2 and 3, and I just don't feel like the value I got out of 3 showed that, and that is a disappointing thing. And I could go on and on, but we did a whole episode about it. Anthony was on that episode, and we kind of all said our piece with like what's wrong with Kingdom Hearts 3.
Yeah, for me it's just everything about the game I love, like the story, the game, not the story. Let me rewrite that. The gameplay and the emotion of the story. There's parts of the story that have an emotion in it that I think is done really, really well. There's a part where like there's just like this part. There's like these things where you see story. Like they really deliver on a lot of these emotional beats. But the execution of the story, and I think the biggest disappointment ever, is like the execution on like Ansem Seeker of Darkness. I think Kingdom Hearts 1, Ansem Seeker of Darkness, and the story that's built up with this character going forward is one of the most interesting villains of all fucking time. Yeah. And his conclusion in Kingdom Hearts 3 with Xehanort and Xemnas and everything is really disappointing because and when you look at the opening, even the opening of Kingdom Hearts 3,
where they're playing the chess game.
They're playing the chess game, and you see young Xehanort. I love his character design, the tan skin, the silver hair.
Oh my
and
God.
Like
that's what I'm saying. Like the way that game opens, dog.
Dude. And when you see the opening sequence of the movie, and like he's playing chess, and then it shows him sitting on a windowsill of like this like essential like city school that he's like learning or growing up in, and you see the Master of Masters Keyblade on the wall, and like that's the Keyblade that old Xehanort ends up having. And like it's there, and you're like you see all this shit, and then you see him sitting on the windowsill, and like he looks up at the sky, and he's like looking at the stars, and you can like see in his eyes like a level of like just in his eyes there's like so much story there and so much character there. And when I'm going to Kingdom Hearts 3, I'm expecting holy shit, there's gonna be a whole sequence where we get like a fucking hour-long cutscene of just like young Xehanort. And like what, like all this explanation and story about all these motivations, and this is the conclusion to Xehanort's story. This is the end and conclusion of his story before they move into the next saga, which is like the Master of Master story. This is where they needed to conclude and wrap up all of these things that Ansem Seeker of Darkness, Xemnas, Xehanort has built up to, and you can see so much character and story and lore just in the way they present young Xehanort, and then like none of it gets resolved or talked about. None of the mystery, the story, none of it gets built on or talked about. And then like it just kind of ends. And so all the emotional beats with like Sora and Kairi get kind of like fleshed out, and they make your heart like pull on the strings. The mental aspect, the part of the story, the mystery that really brought you in and you want to understand, just like nothing happens with it. And it's like, what the fuck? Like I've been waiting for all of this. And like you can see that they have something there, and then for whatever reason, it just didn't make the final cut. Like you can see the way they animated the opening with young Xehanort that like they have something there, and then like it just doesn't get delivered. And then to fucking shit on the cake, because I don't know if Fraser knows this. Everybody knows there's a mobile game that has a bunch of story in the mobile game that's very frustrating. About a year or maybe even 2 years after Kingdom Hearts 3 came out, there was an expansion on that mobile game called The Dark Road, and apparently The Dark Road is like the full story of Xehanort. And I'm like, what the I haven't seen it yet, but it's infuriating.
Isn't this the second time they've put important stuff in one of these types of games?
Yes, and it's infuriating because like that should be in the games. Like why is it on a random offshoot cell phone game that has like paper mache graphics? Like
like
I don't want to know the story of the greatest villain in this fucking spinoff. Like, what is happening?
Yeah, it's so I also want to ask this. I forget. Was Maleficent in Kingdom Hearts 3?
Barely. That's the other thing. They built up the black box. The black box.
Oh, that's what she was doing in Kingdom Hearts 3. Yeah.
The black box is something that was building up before Kingdom Hearts 3 came out. There was this build up of the black box, and we're all super interested in what is in the black box. And then the Kingdom Hearts 3 trailers and like even the game itself leads you to believe that there's going to be some shit with the black box in it. Maleficent is looking for the black box the whole story. Nothing happens with it at all. There's like no conclusion of the black box. And then the very, very end, the secret cutscene or whatever, you get like a reveal of who Lucio is, and then like he still has the black box, but like we still don't know what's in it, which is like
so that's what I mean. Like we didn't make any progress with the story.
Yeah, there was like no progress. Like, there's no progress on Xehanort's story and backstory and motivations. And there was no progress made on the black box or Lucio and Master. It's like, what the fuck did we just do?
It's really weird because again, you got to put this into context. If this game,
sorry, I don't know if that was loud. I just accidentally kicked the wire from my mic, so I apologize if that hurt anybody's ears.
You got to also put it in context that again, this game was 10 plus years after Kingdom Hearts 2. The issue with that is if this game came out like let's say 3 years after Kingdom Hearts 2, I wouldn't be as mad about it. I would still be like, okay, I would be annoyed, but I would say, well, another game is probably coming in the next 2 years or so, right? So it's not that
which is still true, but like,
yes,
what's frustrating
is that it took so long, and I feel like they could have wrote a better script in that amount of time than the script that we actually got. So there's not, Maleficent isn't really a big part of it. And again, if you're wondering why I'm asking about Maleficent, just think about the essence of Kingdom Hearts. Like, I am just bringing up things that are tantamount to what Kingdom Hearts is. So Maleficent, Final Fantasy characters, like there are things that have just always been a core of the game, and all of a sudden they're being excluded, and I'm not really sure why they're going that direction, but I don't like it.
Yeah, you already said Sephiroth, but I've made this argument before. Some people think I'm crazy. I think there is a very large percentage of people that think of Sephiroth, maybe not before the Final Fantasy VII remake, because I think the remake would have changed things. Before the 7 remake, though, I think there's a large amount of people that know Sephiroth as a Kingdom Hearts character. Like, they know he comes from Final Fantasy VII, but, like, his representation in KH1 and KH2 is so fucking iconic that, like, people know Sephiroth as that. People think every time you see Sephiroth, he has one wing. They think like that's how he's always looks.
They know that he's super threatening because of Kingdom Hearts. They know that he's outrageous. When people talk about villains that are really iconic and really powerful, Sephiroth is always brought up in the conversation because he's iconic. Like Sephiroth has the biggest shock factor next to only and rivaled by only Sora of all the characters released in Smash Bros. So every character that's ever been released in Smash Bros, Sephiroth and Sora are top 2. Like when you look at how many views they have and stuff like
Hearts.
they're both Kingdom Hearts. Like, and I don't have a problem with people saying like Sephiroth from Kingdom Hearts, because I consider Kingdom Hearts to be a Final Fantasy game. It's in that verse until Kingdom Hearts 3 changed that. And I'm like, well, now I can't really say that anymore because Kingdom Hearts 3 changed that. But before, they were tied together. Like Final Fantasy games, and they're all Square anyway, and they all have like great composers and stuff for the music. I would tie them together, but now I can't do that. Also, I just want to say this, because I keep forgetting this point as we speak, and it keeps going out of my mind, and now it's back, and I want to say it while I have it. There have been a couple Final Fantasy games that have come out before Kingdom Hearts 3 that they could have included characters from those Final Fantasy games in Kingdom Hearts 3, instead of, like, if they didn't want to have to reuse like all the ones that we already know, like Tifa, Aerith, and stuff like that, Leon. If they wanted to use Noctis and his 4-man group, because those are the 4-man characters of Final Fantasy 15. If they wanted to use Lightning and Snow and like all of those, they could use those people from Final Fantasy 13.
We mentioned that 13 was a disappointment, but I still would have enjoyed seeing Lightning. Like, I think it would have been cool to see Lightning. She on your party would have been cool as fuck. Yeah. Like Saz, like all of it, like just seeing them, or go to one of their worlds, because their world is huge and their world is cool as hell. The Pulse you see, and the reason why I hate Final Fantasy 13 is because all of the technical jargon and the hallway that it is, because it's not, you cannot deviate from the hallway. The whole game is a hallway. The whole game is a hallway. But like it has interesting characters. Like honestly, Final Fantasy 13 has really, really cool characters. They're just in a really shitty storyline. Yeah, interesting characters. It has a beautiful looking world when you finally get to see it. So it has, I mean, the music, like, and their enemies are basically machines, which would have fit really well into Kingdom Hearts. Like Kingdom Hearts 3 could have used the Pulse Lassie and stuff like that as a boss. They could have been the enemies in that world. Sora could have teamed up with Lightning Lightning could have joined his team, and that would have been an amazing thing, but they just kind of didn't use any Final Fantasy characters. And I just imagine that if you're going to have a game that has taken 10 plus years to make, and all these Final Fantasy games have come out since then, you could probably incorporate some of the newer Final Fantasy characters, and then it would make people interested in those Final Fantasies as well, because at the end of the day, this is all under the same company. This is all Square Enix. So Final Fantasy 15 and Final Fantasy 13 are not their best sellers. A lot of people have never even played them. And the reason why is because they're just not that talked about, not that interesting. But like if you put them in Kingdom Hearts, a game that is really highly regarded, you may get people to say, damn, Noctis throwing his fucking swords and teleporting to them like Monado is really cool in Kingdom Hearts 3. I might want to play his game now. Yeah. Like you will definitely get some leakage from Kingdom Hearts 3 if Noctis is one of the coolest Final Fantasy characters. Let's be clear. His design, he's Sasuke, but he's also Monado. Like he's literally the two characters put together. He looks like Sasuke, he fights like Monado. His the exact same ability as Monado. His weapons, he can teleport to them, and it is fucking broken. But like missed opportunities with Kingdom Hearts 3 and Final Fantasy 13 being a actual hallway of a game where you cannot deviate, and also you don't get to make a party until several out. Like I'm gonna throw out an arbitrary number. I don't remember how long, but let's just say I'm gonna say 30 hours into the game is when you finally get to have all of the party members of the whole game. Yeah. And before that,
every single part of the game, every arc is 2 characters at a time. So it'll be Lightning and Snow together for a long time. Then it'll be Saz and the girl who has Bahamut or whatever together for a long time. And then it'll be, and it just goes like that. Fang, I think is the name.
It's like really fragmented, and like you don't have any real agency or customization for your party or your play style, because like you're just like forced into doing like what they tell you to do until you get to like
and
the end.
What's really sad is, and I learned this the hardest of ways. So I like to play RPGs the way I like to play them. I typically don't use items like that. I'm really grindy. I typically overlevel myself a lot of the times. I do a lot of things that are like, this is just how I play RPGs. In this game, when Kenny says like you don't really get to do anything outside of what they tell you to do, there are bosses that you can't beat unless you use a specific I forget what they call the fighting system. It's not a spear grid, it's like a stratagem or something like that.
Yeah.
But basically like you have to set up your team. One of them is going to be a tank, one of them is going to be the aggressor, one of them is going to be a mage, and you can cycle a paradigm shift is what it's called. I think it's called paradigm shifts. So in battles, you can have these paradigms where your lightning will act as this type of character, or your snow will be this type of character, and you go cycle between them throughout the battle. And I didn't know that you couldn't just be like, well, this is the way I like to have my character set up, so I'm going to do this. And even though some fights might be harder, I can still win. There was a boss fight against one of the pulseless sea machine things. You could not win. Like, you could not win unless your team was set up a certain way. And it was so disappointing. Like, but the ignorant part is once you figure out the paradigm shift to stick to, you put your controller down, and because it's auto battle, you put your controller down and your characters start doing what they're supposed to do. You take almost no damage. You fucking attack them for a lot, and you basically counterattack and block everything. And it was really corny to me. I felt like I wasn't doing anything. I was really disappointed. And I don't know. I just thought that it was a big letdown. Like, that game was a big letdown, and it was a Final Fantasy game following 12, which again, 12 is amazing, by the way. 12 characters should also be in Kingdom Hearts games, by the way. Another game where, like, why are we not using character like Vaughn? It's about time now. Like, get him in the game. It's time. Final Fantasy 12 is actually a good game. I'm just that's kind of my piece on Final Fantasy 13 and Kingdom Hearts. Like, they're very big anticipated games, and ended up being letdowns.
They were. I mean, there's things about both of those games that I really love. There's things about those games that are really fun. But then there's, we've already discussed them. There's some core aspects that really, really are disappointing.
Yeah.
I want to mention, I don't know how much more you got. I want to mention, you said you're done.
That is the end of my list, so I am officially done.
I know I'm missing something else that I was thinking about earlier, but I'm forgetting it. But I'm remembering another one. The Paper Mario Sticker Star is
that a game?
Yes. So the Paper Mario franchise is Paper Mario 1 and 2 are some of the most fun RPGs you will ever play. They are RPGs. One one's on N64, the other one's on the GameCube. Paper Mario and Paper Mario the Thousand Year Door. They are some of the most engaging, really fun RPGs you'll ever play. They have a great combat system where you're constantly engaged. You can never put the controller down. You have to, like, in some games, you can hit attack, and then, like, your guy will just attack. And then, like, they'll attack you, and that's it.
Yeah.
Like, in this game, it's always active. Now, there's other games that do stuff like this, but the Paper Mario one I really like the most, where it's like, when you do an attack, every different attack has a different way of doing it. So, like, if you do a jump, Mario will go up, and he'll jump on the enemy, and you have to, like, time the A press to do more damage with the jump. Or if you do the hammer, you have to, like, hold the stick back for a certain amount of time, and then flick it forward, and, like, you'll hit with the hammer. And when the enemies attack you, they all attack you at different timings, and you have to press A at like a certain timing, and you can reduce the damage you take. So even on the enemy turns, you can never put the controller down. Like, you're constantly like pressing A or like doing different things at different timings to like reduce damage you take, and then deal more damage. And even though it's an RPG, there's a level of skill involved with like timing and stuff. So those two Paper Mario games are really fun. The story is fun. The gameplay is fun. Everything about it's awesome. The world's fun to explore. Great fucking games. Awesome RPGs, full of depth. Then there came a game called Paper Mario Sticker Star, which came out on the 3DS. Oh no. Then there was Super Paper Mario, which came out on the Wii. That game was really fun, but it deviated a lot from the first two. But it was still a good game. It wasn't what I wanted, but it was still good. So anyway, then Sticker Star came out on the 3DS. And I bought this game the day it came out. I remember walking to GameStop in the fucking cold. I remember it being cold out. Walking to GameStop, buying the game, walking home and just like reading the back of the box, unwrapping it, looking at the instruction booklet, and just being so amped and excited. And I got home and I started playing it, and it was such a fucking letdown. It is probably the worst Paper Mario game ever made. And it has set forth a standard that the Paper Mario games that followed it kind of adapted. And like Kingdom Hearts, there was original characters, right? This isn't exactly the same, but basically in the first two Paper Mario games, there was like these original characters that were in the game that weren't just generic Toads or generic Koopas or generic Goombas. And they had like these unique personalities and stuff, but starting in Sticker Star and going forward, all of the characters were just like generic Mario characters. It was like Toads are all Toads and like Koopas are all Koopas. There's no like unique designs of the Koopas. They're all just like
that does not sound good.
It's just like they stripped all the life out of it. And I don't know, it was so bad. The gameplay was bad. The game rewarded you for not getting in fights. Basically, there was like the sticker system, and like you use the sticker in battle and you would lose it. And like there was no experience, you didn't level up, there was no progression. So basically, if you had good stickers, you were rewarded for just not fighting. You were rewarded for dodging all of the enemies and going to the final boss, because you could lose your stickers in those fights, and then like you wouldn't have them for the boss, and you didn't gain anything for doing fights. You just got like coins. And it was such a backwards game. It was so bad.
Yeah, that's really unfortunate.
It's very bad. And then like Color Splash came after it, which was a lot better, but still really bad. Still had a lot of the same issues. And then finally there was Origami King, which is the best out of those three Paper Mario games. It's actually a good game. It's really fun, but it still carries over some of the issues that were born in Sticker Star, and they haven't gone back to having like wholly new, unique, original characters like the first two Paper Marios had. Yeah. And it's just been a really, really, really big disappointment. And it's one of the games that I grew up with that I love the most. Everybody that's ever played the 1,000-Year Door has nothing but good things to say about it.
The 1,000-Year Door is regarded as one of the best video games of all time.
It's such a engaging fucking game, and just kind of where the series is going is very disappointing. Origami King is very fun, but it's still not the 1,000-Year Door or Paper Mario 64.
All right. Well, if that wraps up everything, if you have anything else on your list, let me know. But if you don't, we can.
I think that's it for now.
Okay.
I know there was like another thing I was thinking of, but I lost it. So it'll get brought up sometime.
It'll get at another time. All right, that's perfectly fine. Before we get out of here, as always, we want to give a shout out to the people on our Patreon. So we're at the start of a new month. The November exclusive Patreon only episode is out there. Also, we did start a new segment / series on Patreon called The Master and the Pupil, where it's me and Kenny's cousin Nick Stango. We go on Dueling Book and we just play people in Edison format, and we talk about our plays. Sometimes he duels, sometimes I duel. We have 2 episodes recorded for that already. The first one is already on Patreon. I'm going to put it on YouTube so that people can know about it and then decide if they want to join the Patreon. And I'll put the second episode also on the Patreon and also on YouTube at some point. And then after that, these will be Patreon exclusive episodes. So if you're interested in that series, let us know how you feel about it. If you've seen it already, if you haven't, then check it out. Anyways, we have Connie, Austin, Leon, Quest, Garrett, Xavier, Hylian, Dimitri Barnes, Alexander Brissett, Vinny Casello, Giovanni Avallo, CJ, Dub K Dad 1, Dan Varable, First to Home, Estada Akuma, Mitchell Nels, Midwest Gaming, Dimitri Sophiris, Vince Marquette, Dallas Bailey, Roz Weiss, Nick Stango, Hanto, our 2-time national champion, Vincent Zen, Sarah Maria, Sunny Top Cut Podcast, Alex Ahern, Philip Campa, Jalen Haskins, Arale Melfi Slump, Kang Petty, and our newest, and shout out to you, especially Chris Lynn, who we recently backed your Kickstarter for React, the board game that he created, and has already blown the expectations out on it. Yes, we did a whole episode on React. We've had several episodes with Chris Lynn on it. We're actually going to have another episode with Chris Lynn on it in the future. But Chris is great. And he has a fucking Kickstarter where his pledge goal was $20,000. We checked it 2 days in, and it was at $70,000 already. So I don't know what fucking strings Chris has pulled out there, but I'm so excited that he has already been super successful and more than 3 times over his goal in 2 days. In 48 hours. I don't know. Chris, I didn't even know you knew people. I didn't know you knew enough people to get $70,000 in pledges in fucking 48 hours. So whatever you're doing something right. And
Yes,
shout
sir.
out to you in the React game. If you guys don't know what we're talking about, look for React on Kickstarter. There's also a I Am Nerd Podcast episode featuring Chris Lynn, and he talks about the game React. We also talk about Yu-Gi-Oh! In that episode. So check that out if you're wondering what the hell we're talking about. But he has subscribed to our Patreon for an entire year, because apparently I forgot that you could do this, but you can actually just say, I plan to be a patron for a whole year. And when you do that, you get a discount. So he subscribed at the party member tier, which is normally $10, which would be 10 times 12, so 120. He subscribed for an entire year at once. And so he got a discount. I'm not exactly sure what the discount amounted to, but I can see here that he subscribed for an entire year. And that is really, really dope. So shout out to you, Chris. Thank you so much for that. And we, in tandem, supported his Kickstarter at the $140 tier. So, you know, this is, I love content creators kind of helping other content creators. Like we help each other. We're our own little community. And this is just really fun.
Fraser pointed out that he was like, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he showed me the Kickstarter. I was like, oh shit, awesome. And we were looking at it. And then I looked, and then I saw the highest tier was like retailer tier. I was like, all right, well, I'm not a retailer.
Yeah, we're not retailers.
And then like we just both agreed, like, let's get, I think it's like collector edition tier.
It was literally the second highest tier. So retailer being the highest one, which we are literally not. And then the second one was like I think it was called collector tier, and it was $140, and you get all this shit in it. And we just, Kenny recommended, like, well, let's just get that one. I was like, oh, I'm down. Like, I'm 100% down.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like, so it was awesome. I'm excited for the game. I'm excited to try it with Fraser. And also, I'm just excited to support Chris. He's fucking dope. And then it was super cool because, like, not even less, it felt like less than 5 minutes. Right after we supported his Kickstarter, he was like, boom, and like got on the Patreon. It was like, and it's really, I just love that love, you know, going back and forth and everybody supporting each other, and just everybody trying to, like, you know, do what they love and trying to make it out there.
Yeah. 100% agree. So that's kind of where we are. I'm still loving the space that we're in, making this podcast for you guys. I hope that you're enjoying the content. We had a lot of crazy Yu-Gi-Oh guests this year. We had Jesse Cotton, Chris LeBlanc. Like, it's been a crazy year. Joe Dietrich, Hanzo, our 2-time national champion, like his return to Yu-Gi-Oh, winning nationals twice after 10 years. So many iconic people. Shout out to all of you who have joined the podcast. Dominic Couch, one of the members on the team that Silverman won his second YCS with. Are you going to finish that? There's also a 3v3 YCS coming up in Vegas in February, where I'm hoping that you guys go back to back. And I think that the team name that they said it was going to be was like Back for Seconds. I think they were
that's awesome.
Isn't that cool? They could have a whole theme with this. Like they have a whole, their team is so cool because they have a whole, now granted, Dom used to be the biggest person on the team. Weight wise, he is now the smallest person on the team because he's lost like 200 pounds since then, which I'm so proud of him for still to this day. I think that's so awesome. And also an inspiration for a lot of people who struggle with like their weight and things like that and body image and stuff. So really cool stuff there. But yeah, we've had a lot of great guests this year, and we want to continue all of this going into the next year. So shout out to everyone who supports us. Some of you have literally been supporting us since the very beginning, and that is fucking crazy to me. It's so cool that like when people show their Spotify and how we're the number one thing that they listen to on Spotify, mind blowing. Like to know that we created this little show and people say, this is a part of my day. This is a part of my week. This is what gets me through my work day. I wish that you guys did every day. Like, it's crazy to me that is a thing. That when I see people ranking their Spotify, like, what have you listened to the most in 2022? And to see the IMNerd podcast being number one, Marcus Hayden shared his, another guest of the podcast. He shared his, and we're number one on his. Alex Flamer shared his, and a ton of other people. I don't want to go through every single one, but actually, I will say this: if you want to tag us, tag me, or tag the IMNerd podcast in your photo or your screenshot of Spotify's like what you listen to the most in 2022, tag us in it. And we will
even if we're not number one, if we're number two or three.
We don't give. If we're anywhere on your like top list,
if we're on the list.
Yeah, we're on the list. We're happy to be on the list. But everyone that has shared it, coincidentally, we've been number one on every single one, which is so funny because there's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh podcasts out there now. There's a lot of like people doing podcasts from the Yu-Gi-Oh community, and even though we are not strictly a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast, this episode being one of them, where we didn't talk about Yu-Gi-Oh really at all, but even though we're not a Yu-Gi-Oh podcast, we're still like a part of that conversation because both of us have played Yu-Gi-Oh! We still play Yu-Gi-Oh! And stuff like that. Thank you guys so much for the support, though. As I always say, do the things that make you happy. Mm-hmm. And we are getting the hell out of here.
So long, Gay Bowser. Oh, also, I fucking hope the Mario movie is not disappointing. I just thought of that when I said so long, Gay Bowser, and this is the episode about disappointment. I just want to say I'm fitting this in right here. God damn it, I hope that Mario movie is good. So far, I like the way it looks.
If we can, we should see it together. I really want to see that.
Yeah, that just popped in my head. God damn it! I hope that's not disappointing.
Hold on, let me just check. Mario movie. When is the release date of this? April 7th, 2023. Okay, so it's coming out next year. So we should try, if we can make it happen, we should try to see this together. Because I want to do a podcast episode on it like after it releases.
Yeah. And
I just think it would be such a cool... I
definitely want to see this movie.
I'm really excited. So anyways, guys, we are out. Catch you in the next one.
So long.